welcome to episode 10 of the Sports Card Advantage podcast. I am rolling solo today. Bunk, unfortunately, had some Little League commitments and was not able to make it. So it is May 18th, day one of the NBA playoffs. The play-in rounds are today, at least starting today. So the topic of conversation is going to be basketball. We're going to talk mostly basketball today and then a little bit of baseball. We'll start with the thought that everybody is trying to figure out whether or not there's going to be another Tyler Herro this NBA playoff season. And when I say another Tyler Herro, I'm talking strictly in the vein of whether or not we're going to see another basically run-of-the-mill player step up on the main stage, shoot the lights out, play his heart out, drop a whole bunch of points, and see his card skyrocket. For those of you that don't know, Tyler Herro, his cards are, you could probably get them for around $100 going into last year's NBA playoffs. And then by the end of the playoffs, you were seeing those same $100 cards go for $400 or $500. We have since moved back to that $100 range and below on Tyler Herro, but all the same, if you can find that player that is where you can get his cards for relatively cheap and flip them for 4 to 5x this playoff season, I'm sure you're looking for it. I personally don't think you're going to see that drastic of an opportunity this year. I think last year we were in the pandemic. People were, the hobby was at all-time highs. People were basically throwing money at everything. We are since, probably about 7 or 8 months since then. And, the hobby has calmed down a bit. We've seen probably about a 50 to 60% pullback from some of these all-time highs across the board. And it makes sense. Everything was very vastly inflated. And, we saw 10 and 20x on certain cards. And, the card market is reacting just that way. It's a market. And I think that's what sometimes people forget. And they're like, well, it's everything, the hobby's off and, it's going to come to an end and it's dead. And it's a market. We've said it on this podcast a bunch. There's enough volume going around and enough cards that are being bought and sold that the hobby is going to start, acting like a market. The same as Microsoft, Bitcoin, Tesla, the euro, dollar, any commodity that you can trade, that there's trading volume, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be, retracements, there's going to be surges, and we're starting to see that, so the hobby saw this massive increase, and then people take profits. People that get in at 100 that could sell at 400, they're going to take profits just the same. So I think that, last NBA playoffs with Tyler Herro, you had a bit of a lightning in a bottle situation. Do I think that the playoffs are definitely going to bump some guys up? 100%. Same as any time where guys are on a main stage, national coverage, the opportunity to buy is there. I mean, Luka, for example, is at some of his recent lows. His Prism PSA 10s are selling for less than $1,000 regularly for the first time in a long time. If he comes in and lights it up in the playoffs, you'll see those numbers spike back up. So I think there'll be definitely opportunities. We're going to talk about a few guys here in a minute. But do I think you're going to see the same level of FOMO and people just throwing money at a guy like Herro like you did last year? No, I could be wrong, but I don't think that there's going to be a this year's version of Tyler Herro. I do think there's definitely money to be made, but I don't think that it's going to be as drastic. So with that being said, we're going to jump into our next segment here, and that is going to be our investments, flips, and lottery picks. We have a ton of stuff to talk about for this, just based on the fact that we are looking at basketball playoffs, baseball starting to heat up. I have 8 or 10 guys that I want to go over. Since Bunk wasn't here, I figure we'll take this opportunity to really dive into some charts and, take a look at a few things. So first and foremost, we're going to look at Tyler Herro. We just talked about him. And, so if you think that there is opportunity for lightning in a bottle twice, here's his card chart. We'll look at, today's going to be nerd heavy on technical analysis for card charts. And, we're going to be looking at a bunch of stuff. So we'll start with Tyler Herro. I'm a big technical analysis guy. I look at charts, and here is an opportunity where I see that you can buy where it's at. Basically, it's roughly 2-year low, right around this $100. You're seeing opportunities to buy $85-$90 going into the playoffs. If you can get something for below $100, I think you have an opportunity here to see tremendous potential upside. I don't think it's going to hit $400 or $500 like it did last year. But if he comes in and, plays like he did in last season's NBA playoffs, you definitely have opportunities to double up. And he seems to show up in big games. So, I think you have very minimal risk with great reward potential on picking up Herro right now, and we'll see what the Heat can do in the playoffs. And speaking of the Heat, I think Bam Adebayo is another opportunity here. Once again, Adebayo having a great season. We have dipped below that $200 mark. This is his sales over the last 2 years. He topped out also, last year in the $500 range. And, once again, he's having a solid season. And, the technicals here are decent as far as just, if he plays well in the playoffs, you have some minimal downside risk and, some good upside potential. So Adebayo is another guy I'd look at. His PSA 10 prisms, as we see here, where people are picking these up for 175, 180. This guy got one at 140 a couple weeks ago. So if you shop at some off season time, off peak hours, not buying on Sunday nights, and try to find some other auctions that are ending middle of the day. You should be able to get something $150, $170. His silver PSA 10s are going for $500. It's also not a terrible deal. As I mentioned before, we'll take a quick look at Luka too. Here is Luka's Prism PSA 10. For all these guys, we're looking at their Prism PSA 10s. That's not to say that there aren't other cards of them that are out there that you can look at. When you're looking at cards, Prism is obviously the gold standard, but you can definitely look at some, Select, Optic. A lot of times these cards are trading in the same type of patterns. So, Prism's usually going to be the most expensive. So if if these prices are not in your budget, look at Select, look at Optic as some alternatives for these options. Luka, for the longest time, had just massive runs trading right around the $1,200 range. And then it popped up during last year's playoffs, had a fantastic run, topped out around $2,000, and then settled back into that $1,200 range. And, we've seen it just trail off. As the hobby itself has trailed off, so has the value of his cards. And now you're seeing consistently people able to acquire these at $900 to $950. Definitely less than $1,000. As we go into the playoffs, those cards could easily shoot back up to $1,200 to $1,500 if Luka lights it up and shows once again that he is clutch and can help the Mavericks win a playoff series. So his silvers are also able to be had. I would look at, just depending on what your budget, his PSA 9 silver is $1,500. I would look at that potentially as a long-term hold. The population on it is a lot less. His Prism PSA 10, you're approaching 17,000. That does not even count what's still sitting at PSA. But if you look at his silvers, I think the population on those is a lot less. And if you feel that he is the real deal and that he is going to have a career, so yeah, the PSA 10 silvers are 2,000, PSA 9s are 2,000. That's, if you have the $1,500, $1,400, I would look at that as a long-term hold. Just stick it in a safe, and if he has the type of career that a lot of people think he's going to, that could definitely be worth a good amount of money in the next 10 years. We got two more basketball guys. The next one we're going to talk about is Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. is an interesting guy to look at, simply because he had a ton of hype, but he's been overshadowed a lot by Jokic and Jamal Murray. But now that Jamal Murray is hurt and done for the season, we've definitely seen his cards start to run up a little bit once the injury was announced. And, Nuggets have an opportunity to do some damage in the playoffs, and we're going to see, whether or not Porter is for real. His prices are a little high, but at the same time, if him and Jokic can get it together and, really get into a groove and win some games, win some series, I definitely think he's going to have to be a crucial part of that. And, if you can grab it for around $200, you could easily be looking at a 50 to 75% bump here in the playoffs, and something that I would definitely take a look at. I think the price of Jokic has already spiked, at least for the short term. So you'd be taking a bigger risk buying in to some of Jokic's cards, just because a lot of people have already factored in MVP, and the fact that the Nuggets have played so well this season. So if for whatever reason they don't fare well in the playoffs, I think that you'll see a much larger drop on Jokic's cards than Porter. Last but not least for basketball is Donovan Mitchell. Surprisingly enough, Donovan Mitchell has had a fantastic season. The Jazz are in first place. And, I know that he had the ankle injury, and he's been out for a bit, but he's going to be back, and he is potentially going to be back for game one of the playoffs. And as you can see, his cards went from about 600 at the end of February, and now we're looking at about 350 on some of these cards. There is some support here right around this 300 range for the last 12 months or so, 8 months, whatever that is, dating back to last August, September. So I would say that Mitchell's another guy that if he has the opportunity to be on the NBA playoff stage and they win some games, I mean, you could potentially double up. I think that if you're looking for short term or long term, Donovan Mitchell is really, really solid. His PSA 10 Prism pop is 4,000. That's 25%. It's less than 25% of where Luka's at. I mean, his career stats are phenomenal. and he's done nothing but improve every year since he's gotten into the league, and he's just shown that he just keeps getting better. His PSA 10 is about $350. His PSA 9 you can get for less than $100. His Optic PSA 10 you can get for less than $200. His silver PSA 10 is $1,500. So if you're gonna spend $1,000 to $1,500, I mean, you really got to figure: do you want to buy a Donovan Mitchell PSA 10 silver, or do you want to buy just a regular Luka PSA 10? I mean, I'm gonna take the Donovan silver all day long, and I think that it's a really solid buy. If he shows up in the playoffs, you can flip it for a good profit right away, during the playoffs. Or I think you can also just put it in a drawer and hold it for a while. I think his cards are just going to continue to elevate in value, as you've seen here on this chart for the last few years. So yeah, that's it for basketball. We're going to make our way into some baseball. I think that, with the draft and the NBA playoffs, there's definitely been some shine that has, been removed from baseball. Your big three: Soto, Tatis, Acuna. You're not seeing the strength that you'd anticipate, especially with the seasons that those guys are off to. I mean, granted, Tatis has missed almost half the season. Soto also has had some injuries, so those are a couple of guys if you can take a look at. But I think that their values are definitely towards the top. So we're going to look at a couple of other guys where I think that you can get some value. We're going to look at the Yordan Alvarez Topps Chrome PSA 10. Population 878. Low pop on this. You're seeing some good support here between 80 and 100, over the last month. He's hot. He's hitting 350 with 7 home runs. So this is his Topps Chrome rookie PSA 10. And then if you also look at his refractor, the refractor is less than 300. Both of these, the pops are less than 1,000. Granted, he's on the Astros. It's going to take some time before the Astros are back in favor with the hobby, just due to the whole, cheating scandal. But, he seems to be the real deal. Like, he's so far playing good baseball. And, if you can get his cards for less than $100, on the regular Topps Chrome and less than 300 on the refractor, definitely a good idea to just grab it and sit on it. Or you can just flip it, towards the end of the season. The other guy we're going to talk about is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Same Topps Chrome, less than 200. There's been already a spike, but it's come back down, and it's building some support here in this $150 to $170 range. Vlad is hitting the crap out of the ball this year. And, he lost 45 pounds in the offseason. He's come in. He's got new energy. Blue Jays playing decent baseball. He just seems like he can go the distance as far as, putting a career together. I understand that, you're seeing a tremendous jump in his card prices from last year to this year, but if you can pick up his rookies for less than $200 on the Topps Chrome, then that is 100% what I would do. And I believe his refractors are right around 400. Looks like you can probably get them for $300 to $350. If you have that money, also something that you can look at. Very low pops, less than 1,000, and definitely stuff to either hold or flip. I still think that there's room to make some money on these this year. And last but not least for our investment and flips is I think two guys that had tremendous hobby hype that have both gotten hurt and are both basically being ignored right now. I think a lot of people, once these guys, their injuries got announced, since they're longer injuries, people just dumped. People dumped their stock. So you have Luis Robert is one, Eloy Jimenez is the other. Luis Robert is a guy that I would buy and hold until next season, because if he comes into spring training and is hitting the ball well again, there's good upside potential here for him. And same with Eloy Jimenez. Both of these guys have shown that they can play at the major league level, and being able to pick up their regular Topps Chrome for less than 100, or the refractors for less than 200 on Robert. Why not? There's definitely worse ways to spend your money in regards to baseball. So I would definitely look at both of these guys. I mean, you can potentially try to wait a little bit longer, because neither one of these guys is going to be back for a while. So if you want to wait another 3 weeks to a month and see if you can get a better deal, but it doesn't look like, the $100 level seems to be where you have some support, and that's basically probably where it's going to stick. So if you can get something for 80 to 90 bucks, I would definitely jump on it and sit on it and hold it. All right. That is what I got for our investments, lottos, and flips. One other thing we're going to talk about is just an update on what we started talking about last week in regards to the retail part of the hobby. Target made the formal announcement that they are suspending card sales. We actually talked about it last week, probably a day or two before, speculating that after the violent incident in Wisconsin that they were going to shut it down. There was a interview that one of the heads of Panini did with Beckett, basically saying that this is temporary and they're going to try to come up with some other ways to basically curtail some of the crazy behavior that's going on with guys, trying to acquire retail product. So we'll see what happens, over the next few months, and whether or not Target resumes sales of cards, and, when they do, what that's going to be. So that's going to be interesting to see. And we're also waiting to see if Walmart follows suit. As of now, Walmart has not had any sort of violent incidents that they've announced, but you never know. And we'll just have to wait and see. I personally think eventually, if some of this crazy behavior continues, as I said last week, they're going to just go to a lottery system like Top Shot does. And, every week there'll be a queue and people get in. And if you get lucky, you can buy boxes. And if not, there'll be a secondary market like there is now. Unfortunately, you have to pick your poison. You either have crazy guys camping out in the parking lot, or you're going to have bots that, or people are trying to use to get product. The other hot take that we're going to have here to basically close the podcast is PSA. PSA made the announcement that as of July 1, they are going to have a lot of their backlog cleared, and they're going to reopen most, if not all, levels of cards. My hot take is they are going to set some crazy minimum that people are going to have to pay in order to send in cards to PSA. I think they want to raise their profile to be the elite, and they don't want to grade a bunch of $5 cards and get the backlog. I mean, I think that's where the backlog comes from. Guys are buying lots of 100 cards for $5 a piece and sending them all in to get graded at $20 a piece, and hoping to bang some 10s to get 10x their money and make profit. And I think that's what just backs them up. And I think that they're going to set some kind of minimum, which makes it cost prohibitive for people to send in the junk. And I think they're gonna want that junk to just go elsewhere, and they're gonna be wanting to be associated with just the elite grading service for, for the hobby. So I think that there's definitely going to be some pricing changes once PSA comes back in July. It's just going to be a question of whether or not it's going to be 50, 75, 100. We'll see where that shakes out, but I don't think that they really want to be bogged down with cards that are like less than $10 anymore. We shall see. All right, we're going to wrap up. I know it's a little bit shorter than usual, but just me tonight. So, we really appreciate you guys continuing to tune in. For those of you who made it this long, if you guys have any questions or anything that you guys want us to cover or any cards you want analysis on, send us an email. info@sportscardadvantage.com. That's info@sportscardadvantage.com. Thanks, everybody.